Hello dear participants, welcome to a new tutorial from Logi Owl Tutorials presented by me, Sami Khiami. This tutorial is dedicated to focus on how to create and deal with SVG animation using JavaScript. So mainly what we are going to do is to find out how to do animation on an SVG document or image using JavaScript. The thing that I will be doing is very simple. I will be trying to imitate like a bird flying. It will be like a very simple image created by two curves, and this will help us to know exactly how to use curves, which consider as a very powerful tag inside the SVG. So let's start. The first thing that I will do, I'll create an SVG. And this will be inline SVG, so it will be part of the content provided. So the first thing I will do, I'll create HTML file and I'll put everything in that HTML file. Normally, as you know, we do that separation. We put the CSS and the JavaScript in different files. I'll put everything in a single file just to make our work easier. So I'll start by creating a new file. I'm using Visual Studio Code, so I'm creating a new file, and I will directly name the file, give it the file name and extension to be able to benefit the autocomplete functionality. So I'll save it on the desktop as delete me.html, and I will be saving that as HTML file and save it. I think we have a file previously created on the desktop with that name. I will replace it. So now I have delete.me.html on my desktop. So the next step will be creating like the skeleton for an HTML page, and this will be done through like one of the very nice functionality of Visual Studio Code. So I'll be opening that tag and writing the exclamation, or just writing one exclamation. This will help to create like the full structure for a HTML5 page. And as you see here, it's the structure is mentioning like the content and a viewport, and it will show all the details regarding the charset used and the language. Anyway, what we will be doing is directly, as I mentioned, using the body part to put everything in, and for the CSS we will use the style tag in the head part. So I'll be opening a style tag, and I'll be closing style tag just to put the CSS, and for the JavaScript I'll put it in the end of our file before the closing of the body tag. So this will be a script, and all scripts, and all the script will be put like situated in that script zone. So let's start with having the content. The content is, as I mentioned, will imitate a bird flying. So I need to draw that bird, and this will use the SVG inline SVG type of images. And to draw like the shape itself, so I'll be using the path tag, which is one of the SVG type of tags. So with the path I will use an ID, and that ID will be like left wing, and we will be using the D. The D represents the path itself. So in that attribute D, we will be setting all the how that path is drawn. So mainly in my case, I will be using the curve. So what I'll be doing is starting with a point and then trying to draw from there. So I don't need to say left wings. I'll say wings or bird if you like. Bird. So the first one will be in the D will be moving like to draw the first line. So how we will do how we will do the drawing, I will open a file, paint, just to be able to explain that to you, how we normally deal with SVG when we're drawing a path. So consider like a path. The first step with a path is to enable like moving to a specific place to start that from. So this point that I'm starting from, considered like the starting point, and to move to that starting point I will use the letter M, so stand for move, to move to the starting point. Now the next step will be like starting a curve. So for first one I will say move by, like as example, 100. So it will be 100 space 100. So this is moving to that point. Then the next step is to start drawing the curve. So I will use the C for the curve. Okay. And after that I will use 3 sets of parameters. So the first set will consider the first point representing the end of the first tangent of that curve. So if we're saying here C, so we mean the curve, and this will reflect as example if I want to draw that path for a bird, so it will be something like this. So the first path will be like the first tangent will be this tangent here. So I should like draw or specify that tangent with that new point. So let's say that this is 120 and it should be higher than the 100, so 120 maybe. Oh, I'm sorry, up it should be like less because we're counting from the upper left corner, so it will be 180, maybe 80. Okay, going to the next one, so it will be something like the next point, so it will be something like it will be 120 also. Sorry about the mouse. With this will be also on the like less than that space. So if that space is 100 here, so let's consider that to be like 100 plus 100, 200 minus 20, so it will be like 180. So this will be 180 by and since it's on the same like level of that one, we can consider it as 80 also. Let's try that first one. So now those are the two tangents. Then we will end with the the third set of parameter is like the last, the point itself, like the end of the point. So this, as we mentioned, is 200 and 100. So this will represent that point here, the point itself. So the other sets that we put represent the tangents and the last one. So each curve is represented by 3 set of values. The first set will be the tangent of the first, from the first line. The second one will be the tangent for the second point, and the third one will be the end point of that specific curve. For the you saw that we used the M for move, like just to move to a specific point, which represent the beginning of the curve itself. Okay. So to continue on that, let's go directly after that explanation and trying to do that thing. So the first thing, I will be moving to point 100, 100. Then using a curve, I will use the C with, as we mentioned, like it is like 120, 180, 120, sorry, 120, 80, then comma, then the other set is represented by 180, 80, as we mentioned, 180 and 80, and comma, and the last set is represented by the endpoint, which represent 200, 100, 200, which is the X, and 100 is the Y for the last point. So if we try to save that file, save, let's try only to save that and to check how that looks like on how that looks like here. Let's open the browser to see what we have done. And this is our delete me. So as you see, we have that curve. The curve is okay, but the problem with the internal fill of that curve, so it's filled, so we need to make the fill transparent. So we will go back to the code itself, and we will add here for the path itself, like fill equal transparent. Okay, and we can even specify the width. I think we will be using like the stroke width, or weight, maybe width, and it is equal like maybe 3. If we save that, file save, going back to our file, refresh it, and we don't have anything here, like because we didn't specify the stroke itself, the stroke and the color of the stroke, as example, black. Let's see if we did something wrong here. Maybe that's weight instead of width, weight. Maybe I'll check that. Yeah, no, it's working, like black with no fill, and the curve is okay. So we need another curve. So what I will do, I will repeat what we have here in that D, but I will send it to another line just to make it like that. So I will here add another curve, and I will repeat like the same, like not the same numbers, but the same like type of curve. So I'll be using here, if it is 200, it will be 220, and this is after the C, 220, and it will be 100 or 200. 220 for A, it will be 180 maybe. 100, no, the 80 it will be the same, the 80 will be the same. This is for the first curve, the first tangent. The other one will be 220 and no 200 because we are adding extra 100. So this will be this will be 120, 140, 100. Oh, 220, no, this is 200 because this is the end of the curve. 220 and 80, this is okay. Then the next one will be 300, 300 and 300, 180 here, and it will be 80 for sure. And the last thing will be 300 and 100. So this is to have another curve. File, save. If we check that again, this is our virtual bird. Okay, so we can add a kind of head for that bird by using the circle. So I can add a circle here if I want to add another thing. So this is the type of the path named circle. And CX equal 200, 100, CX, I'm sorry, 200, CY equal 100, 100, and I don't remember how to set the radius, but let me say radius. Let's check that. The last thing is R equal 10 maybe. File, save, going back, refresh. And this is our bird head. Okay, now just to make things just to make the movement. Now we ended with creating the SVG and we know exactly where we did get each point from. So the next step is just going with moving the wings, and to do that I need to use that script. Okay, so the first thing that we will think of is to create the animation loop. So creating the animation loop, we'll use request animation frame. Okay, request animation frame is a function that will call with each available animation frame, will call a specific function. This function will update stuff, will update the status, the current status. So normally I will use request animation frame with something called redraw, which is the function normally I use to redraw the scene itself. So request animation frame redraw. This is for the first time. Then I will go function redraw. And if I'm not using any kind of parameter for that, so I can inside redraw I can say something like trying to move that those wings. Okay, so the first thing before going and having that redraw thing, I will use var just to make that available for inside the function. I will use var and I will try to select that path to be able to reach the D value of that path. So the first thing that I would say, my path equal select query selector query select, what was it? We can use query select or select element by ID, but I didn't use ID. Oh, I have the ID bird here. Yes, of course. Select here, like you can say like document, get element by ID, get element by ID, and I can say bird. The other approach that I was thinking of is to use the other one, query, select query document, do query selector, maybe query selector. Yes, query selector. We can use that. We use the same thing, like the hash for the ID. Okay, but for that one, since we are using ID, I can use get element by ID directly. With that, I'm having that object related to the whole path inside, like the my path part. Okay, so this is just to reference that. And inside that function, I can say something like I will need a kind of cycle, and the cycle will be two ways. So I need to move the wings both ways. So it will be something moving between one value and going back. So I will use something called speed. This is var speed. Maybe direction instead of speed, direction. So this is the direction of the movement itself. I'll use one here. Going back here. So we're using direction, and we're using like position. Okay. So mainly position X or Y maybe, because like we need to move the wings up and down. And I think the only thing that we need to use is like we don't need to change the X. So I would say here position Y. Just go with me on that. Position Y equal, like let's start with 80. We will figure out the details later on. So I'm talking about that curve, and since we're moving, like 80 will be like the tangent, because we will be moving the tangents. We will not be moving anything else than the tangents. So just to give that kind of flipping kind of effect. And I want to, when I reach like the other limits, to go back. So this is why I said direction. So the thing that I will do, I will go and say if position Y greater than 120, or position Y less than 80, and I will ask to have direction equal minus direction. This is flipping the, like this is flipping the direction itself, but this is only for just to have that going back and forward type of animation. So the next step will be something like position X, or position Y, I'm sorry, equal position Y plus direction. With that, I'll make sure that I'm going minus or more, like going back and forward from 120 to 80. Okay. The next step is just to recool, request animation frame, and of course, just to be able to build that D, the new D, using the new position Y. So what I will do, I will get the content of that D here as is, and I will be saying like my path, which is the one that we capture here, my path dot set attribute, and I will be focusing on attribute name D, and inside that I should put that value. Okay, and this is the full value. Now there's some of the things that I need to change, some I don't need to change. What I need to control is that one. This is my point of view, just moving from 80 to 120, like going back and forward. So this will, because this will represent the Y, so I'll break here, having two pluses, and I'll say here position Y. And I will replace that everywhere we have that Y value playing with the curve part. This one too. This one too. And this one too. I'm just replacing the 80 part. Okay, let's try to file, save, and see if we have the animation, if we have any results. Okay, this seems to be good, but you see the issue that we're having the curve moving the right way, but we need to have that like the wings themselves to move up and down with that type of movement. So we need that to be happening at the same time. So we don't need only to change that one, we need to change the other one too. So like we only replaced the 80 part, so we need to replace most of the Y's here, because this Y here, the 100, maybe should move up and down. Maybe we can use something like the same structure, but we will use position multiply by 2. I'm sorry, divided by 2 maybe. Okay, or I'm sorry, not divided by 2. I'll pass that here, and I'll say like this will move between 80 and 120. So I don't want that to happen. I will add something to it, so it should be moving like it should be. Maybe let's try that, just replacing that here directly with the endpoints, because this is the one that I need to change. Okay, file, save. With that, refresh. Good enough. This was all about our tutorial to create a like SVG guided type of animation with JavaScript. I know the tutorial is very simple, but like you notice that we use the circle, we use the path, and the path is very powerful in using Bizier curve, as you see, like, and will provide lots of flexibility on creating the content. So that's all for our tutorial for that part. Thank you for your attendance, and see you in next tutorial.